Hi YouTube, welcome back to my channel. I'm Caleb. I use he, they pronouns, and today's video is about a very great book that I want to encourage all you to read. I will not be spoiling it, although I really don't know how you can spoil a memoir, but yeah. This video will be about the book All Boys Aren't Blue, as you can see from the title below, and I will leave a short synopsis on the book in the description below because most likely if you are watching this video, you've either already read the book or you're interested in reading it, so you probably already know in general what it's about. Anyways, I just wanted to highlight my favorite parts, and yeah. To sum the book up in 5 words, it is a Black queer memoir manifesto masculinity. I want to say about masculinity, but that's not 5 words. But yes, it covers, I'm looking at my notes, the themes of so many themes. I literally listed 15 plus themes. The themes of coming out, sexual trauma, consent, pleasure, death, substance use, queer culture, gender identity, and that's trans identity and non-binary identities, masculinity, structural marginalization, Black joy, family, racism, grief, coming of age, friendship, HBCUs and frat culture, sex education, microaggressions, school to prison pipelines, and I guess this goes under racism too, but he mentions medical racism as well. Speaking of medical racism, if you're interested in reading more about that, here is a book, which is also another memoir that I didn't love, but it is an interesting read. Anyways, I really enjoyed how he started off with what you sort of expect, which is him talking about how he was a girly, flamboyant boy, and then he goes into more detail about the rest of his life. And I enjoyed how the book was not just Black trauma, it was also Black joy. There were so many stories that I just want to do this book justice and describe it well enough for you all to go buy it or read it from your library or listen to it on audiobook. I listened to it on audiobook and I purchased it. It's still coming in the mail because, you know, mail is slow. But listening to it on audiobook, it took me all of one day to listen to it, and I was just, it felt like I was on a road trip with him and he was just telling me all his life stories, and I could relate to so many parts of it. I was just this, how are you reading either my diary or how were you in my head so much? And I've never experienced a book like this, and I I'm struggling because I'm trying to contain my excitement while also trying to articulate the beauty that is this book. This is why I wrote the notes, so let me go back to this. The writing was casual, yes, but just the execution of everything was just so excellent. It felt seamless, because it was just his own lived experiences, and it was as if he was reflecting on his own lived experiences, and we were coming to realizations at the same time. Whenever he was talking about his grandma, and how his grandma loves them all differently, he towards the middle end of the book came to the realization of what she meant by that, and I was like, yes, I see that too. I feel that, I see that, I hear you, you know? I love the chapter about his brother. He talks about how supportive his brother was throughout his coming of age and coming to realize his sexuality and his gender. And whenever in that chapter, I just reflected on the future of me and my sister's relationship, because I could see myself writing a book where I write a chapter about her as well, and it being similar to his. The chapter about his grandma again was just so I don't have that relationship with my grandma, but I still felt it just felt so tangible and relatable. I'm literally gonna say relatable 10 times. My favorite chapter was Prom Kings, We Never Were. So if you have already read the book, let me know what your favorite chapter was. But Prom Kings, We Never Were talks about closetedness and again, it felt really relatable. I will link my Goodreads review of this book, so if you want to see a written out, more articulate version of my review, it will be there. He also had a cowboy boot story, and like it made me think back to when I lived in Texas, and like I got my first pair of cowboy boots, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like yeah, they are perfectly like feminine and like masculine, and like it just feels like the perfect like non-binary piece of clothing, shoes. I don't know. Yeah. He also talked about sneaking to watch shows, and I was like, yeah, I did the same thing. Or not just sneaking to watch shows, sneaking to watch gay shows. And I was like, yeah, that was me with like the Fosters. I would like stay up really late and like make sure I recorded it. Thinking back, I'm like, I'm sure my parents knew that I was recording these things. But anyways, I would stay up really late to like watch the gay stuff, so then like no one knew. Yeah. Oh, and the way that he dragged like white history, loved it. There's also a quote where he wrote, "It was easy to pay homage back then to the white historical figures because we learned about them through the lens that they were concerned about all of us." And I was like, yes, because I remember myself being super excited because I really like historical cities, which like is what drew me to DC initially, and the political side of it all. But I remember being a kid and like knowing I still probably know all these like random facts about the different monuments and the different like historical sites in DC. And I remember like giving my aunt a tour and like telling her all these things and being like really proud about it, because I was like, this is like my history, this is our history. Little did I know that like all this was just whitewashed bullshit. But anyways. And another quote said, "You sometimes don't know you exist until you realize someone like you existed before." And that just reminded me of how intentional I try to be around like social media. So the people who I follow on Instagram and the people who I follow on Twitter are mostly all Black and queer, and everything I share is mostly all Black and queer, or stuff that just makes me laugh. But I do that with like purpose and intentionality behind it, because I like want to remind myself that there's people with experiences similar to mine who are thriving, who are working, who are living their best lives, and so that is still possible to me. And so I find it important that like for me to attract those things in my life, I need to like see those things and like have those things like present within my awareness, if that makes sense. Overall, I feel like you can just get so lost in his stories. Everything that he talks about is really relatable to me as a Black, queer, trans person. Again, I felt like he was just there talking to me. And I will say I read a lot of memoirs, so for me to be praising this book so much does like mean something. And I feel like each memoir I read has their own like thing, and his specific thing was not only the fact that he's a Black queer man, and that's just not I mean, there are memoirs that like discuss being Black and queer in America, and I can put them here. But his thing that stood out to me was whenever he discussed being in a fraternity, and he went into like detail about that. I wasn't particularly interested in it, but he did talk about how that was his way of like navigating masculinity, and I thought that was an interesting look. And also all the themes that he brought up, I'm really not doing this book justice in explaining how just seamless like he brought these themes into the stories and like critiqued them, but also just like it didn't feel academic, it just felt like a read, but also just like his life. It was just it's so good. It's just so good. Read the book, please, and then once you read it, comment below and tell me your thoughts. Yeah. All right, as always, I hope you have a great week. Bye.